This is TWiT.
Today we're going to talk about something interesting because we've talked about in our blips and bites in the past about talent acquisition, how we go about finding the right talent for the right job. And that's a hard thing, especially when you move up in executive level and higher. It becomes even harder to find really good talent in the field. Now, Hunt Club's doing this a little differently. Want to tell us a little bit about the business and how you guys are doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. So Hunt Club, kind of who we are, and it's huntclub.com for the listeners out there, and the TWiT ride, which, by the way, I love that name. But we're essentially a new category of talent firms where we tap into the networks of the most connected business leaders in the world that refer out of their own networks for your open role. So we call this group of business leaders influencers. And with every referral an influencer makes, they're eligible to earn $2,000 to $5,000 for a referral that lands a job. And if their referral doesn't land the job and gets interviewed, they'll still earn $100 to $300 depending on the level of the role. So in our model, and a little bit different than I think traditional recruiting, candidates get rewarded. Candidates get a great new opportunity, companies get a great new employee, and referrers get rewarded. So everybody's aligned, and essentially everybody wins.
Right. Now we've talked a little bit about in the past, like obviously as a person who's in tech field, I have my profile on lots of different places, LinkedIn, all the different job sites that are out there today. And when I want to go look for a job, or maybe even headhunters look for people, they look to these sites for that information. Now, how do you decide who an influencer is, and how do you kind of bring them in and make use out of them?
Great question. So we have a gated approach where influencers will essentially join our platform. We'll review their backgrounds, understand who they are, understand what their networks look like, and then the value it can provide to our influencers and the community itself. And then based on that, you're approved into that closed network. So people can go on to huntclub.com/influencers and apply. And then essentially from there, we kind of take the process here internally.
Interesting. Now, I can tell you right now, like now that my profile is out on these sites, I at least once a day, maybe even twice a day, I'll get calls or maybe emails or messages from different headhunters saying, hey, I have this job. If you're interested, check it out. Otherwise, forward it on to somebody that you think is good for it. And sometimes I do. And sometimes I'm even incentivized to do that. Now, how is this process a little different? Now, how are you guys kind of circumventing that whole process? And you have this kind of network and influencers. Do you provide incentives to influencers? Like what is kind of the forcing function for them?
Yeah, great question. So I think the reality is that, most of our influencers, they're already doing this out of their own goodwill, probably like you do yourself, Lou, connect with people in their network for awesome opportunities and, not expecting anything out of it. But we do believe that their action deserves some form of gratitude. So influencers will receive what we call a paid forward reward. So anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000 per referral. That does land a job. And as I mentioned, $100 to $300 for any referral that does get interviewed. And so really, I think influencers, as I mentioned, they're already doing it. We've created kind of a frictionless process that doesn't really have them do any of the heavy lifting. So our technology allows us to identify who in your network would be good for a specific role. And then we'll serve that up to influencers. And all they really have to do is approve the referral. And then our team will take it from there.
Fantastic. Now, can you maybe go through what's the business model for Hunt Club now that you kind of, obviously you get these people in, you do some research about them, you make sure that they're influencers, and then you kind of have a small payout if it's successful. Now, how are you guys making money?
Yeah, so we're working with two sides of the market, right? So we're working with influencers on one side who are the referrers, and then we're working with companies themselves on the other side. So our companies range from seed stage startups to enterprise organizations we've worked with and currently work with everyone from Dollar Shave Club to Pinterest to Flywheel. To companies like Everything But the House and ShipBop here locally in Chicago, G2 Crowd, and this goes kind of on and on. And so we have a couple business models, some that are purely based on search. So we're paid essentially on the success of putting a candidate into a specific role. And then we've got traditional RPO models where we come in and kind of take on an entire organization's recruiting process end to end. And that typically is when you don't have an existing recruiting department, you want to outsource that to someone like Hunt Club.
Got it. Now for me, my hacker mindset, sometimes I think about, hey, how can I potentially, if I need a job and I want to maybe hire maybe an executive level job, how can I potentially hack the system? I guess you could say. In this case, it sounds like if there's an influencer out there, I could potentially maybe approach them and say, hey, like if there's a job that you hear about, can you let me know about it? Is this something that you guys are worried about, that you maybe, hey, that I've already established this relationship with an influencer and they're obviously ones that we trust to give us potential candidates here. And you guys do call it a club. And so to me, it sounds like, hey, like in order to get entry in this club, you need somebody to kind of get you that entry. And so as a candidate, I kind of want to find a way to get into that club. And so is there maybe some exclusivity there? Are you guys worried about that part of it?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And, I think for us, right now we don't work directly with candidates. As I mentioned, we work with influencers and then with the companies themselves. And so we're going to be opening up actually a candidate portal here soon where candidates can kind of actively apply to join Hunt Club or apply for a specific job itself. But I think the cool thing about our model is, kind of the power of that referral, right? And you think about, your own life, right? Like you're happy with what you're doing, but there's probably a handful of people that if they came to you and said, hey, Luke, you got to take a look at this. You know them, you trust them, you respect them. And because of that, you'll take the 10, 15 minutes to listen to whatever it is that this individual is presenting. And then we kind of take that process and convert that passive candidate into an active candidate. So we've created our own proprietary platform and technology that automates the parts that make sense to be automated. And then once we get a candidate engaged via that influencer, a services team takes over, and that's kind of where the human element kind of drives the process from there on out.